Hi, welcome again. This is something I should have spoken about a very long time ago, but when I started this channel, it was just ad hoc videos on things that I was doing with my own projects. There was no real structure. I realized I left out some really important basic concepts. Most channels will have this video about nodes, scenes, and instances, so I'm just throwing my 2 cents into the mix. You may or may not recognize the starting screen. Every time we start a new project, this is the first screen that comes up. But this is a screen for 3D project. Usually I just switch across on the top here to 2D. If you notice at the lower left hand corner, I already have some scenes here. All these TSCN files, these are scene files that I've already created. When I was new to Godot, I thought scenes meant levels, but that's not actually what a scene is. To explain this, I have to go into nodes first, then scenes, and then we'll talk about instantiation afterwards. Now let's just say I want to start a new scene. Let's just call it a 2D scene. These on the left hand side here are several nodes that we can use, and we can choose any one of these, or if we click this plus sign here where there's other nodes, there are several different nodes we can use. These are all built-in nodes that Godot has, and we can use any one of these to create what we call a root node, as it's named here. A root node is the first node that you put in your hierarchy, and that hierarchy can be saved as a scene. If you look at the bottom here, you'll see I already have some scenes saved. These TSCN files, these are all scenes that I've already made for this project, but let's get into it. First of all, let's speak about nodes. Nodes are the basic building blocks that we use to build our apps or games. For instance, I'm going to click 2D scene on the left hand side here, and this becomes, if you notice in the scene window, there's node 2D. We can rename this to whatever we like. I'm just going to click this, and let's call this game scene. So this is going to be my main game scene, and press enter. Now in this game scene, I've just used a node to create this hierarchy here. There's only one item in this hierarchy right now, but if I click one of these others on the top middle of the screen here, I've already created a player scene. If you notice, the scene window has changed. This is a player scene that I created beforehand, and there's a root node which is named player. It's also a node 2D type, as you can see here in the pop-up. And I have a sprite 2D which is meant to show textures, and in this case our texture is our little player character here. I also have an enemy which is similar, and I put a little zombie character. I put a cart. The player will be pushing the cart to hit the enemies. I also have a help bar scene in which the root node is different from the others. It's not a node 2D, so this just goes to show that root nodes don't have to be node 2D or node 3D. They can be almost any other node. You'll notice this is a canvas layer, but it also has a sprite 2D attached. You can attach anything inside your scenes depending on what you are building. Now with all these scenes, all I did was put nodes together, and a collection of nodes. Let's go across to the one that we were creating. A collection of nodes. Let's say I want to put a background onto this. I'm just going to add a sprite 2D layer, and I already have some assets that I put into this project. I'm just going to drag this across into over the sprite 2D, or on the right hand side where it says texture here, and it gives me a nice little background that I can use for my game. Let's just save this. When we click save, it gives you the option to save it as the same name that we use for the root node. You can save it as that, or whatever you choose to rename it as. At this point, I can run this game. I can click this little play icon. This will be our main scene that will run the full project. Or I can just click this icon here to run just the scene alone. Let's just see how it looks. So this is our scene so far. As you can see, I just borrowed this from FreePix or FreePic. Now what we just did there is we used nodes, and we added another node, and we save those nodes as a scene. And a scene is a collection of those building blocks, those nodes. So basically, each node, each building block has a different job to do. In this case, Sprite 2D shows a texture or a picture. We can have timers, we can have character bodies. There are so many different nodes that we can use with so many different jobs to build our scenes. So now that we know what the nodes are and we know what a scene is, we have all these different scenes here. We have a player, enemy, a cart, a health bar. Each of these scenes can be reused. You can reference from another node. For example, if I go back to my game node, I would like to reference a player. We have a player here that was created separately, our player scene, and I want to put the player in my game scene, my main game scene. So what I can do is click this little link icon here, which will bring up a list of the scenes that I can use, and we can put our player in the scene. Now if we save this and run it, we'll see our little player here in the scene. Let's close this. If you notice here, we can have nodes with children nodes with more children nodes. But in this case, I didn't want the player to be a child of the Sprite 2D, which is our background. I can rename this background BG for background. So now I know this is something different from the player. And I'm just going to drag this player out and move it. And I'm just going to move my background above the player in the scene hierarchy. Now there's something I want to point out here. On the left hand side here, underneath the scene window, if I hover over the nodes, I can see the type of nodes I have. So our root node is a node 2D. Our background is a Sprite 2D. And if I hover over player, you will see it's an instance of player scene. You can instance or reuse other scenes inside other scenes. And that's what we did here. Our game scene has an instance of a player scene. Of course, we can add an enemy now if we like again. So let's just click the link and let's just add an enemy. And let's just drag our enemy down here. And we can duplicate that enemy as many times as we like, or we can just link another one. It doesn't matter. Let's link another one. Great. Enemy 1, enemy 2. Make sure he's separate from the other enemy, so he's not a child of that enemy. And let's just move him around so we have more than one enemy. Let's say one is jumping. It doesn't matter. Let's just add a cart. Let's move my cart down here. This cart is what he's going to fight off enemies with. Now we're not going to make an actual game. I'm just putting static scenes here. But of course you can write code or add different features to make this game work for you. Let's save this. You notice on the left hand side here, I keep making a mistake that I should point out to you. When you're adding new scenes, if you do not want it to become a child of another scene in here or another node, make sure and click the root node first before you instantiate a child scene. In this case, I made a mistake and I put the last cart as a child scene of the enemy, which I do not want, so let's delete that. I could have just dragged it out, but I just want to show this. I'm going to click the root node, which is our game node, and instantiate the cart, and there we go. It's a whole separate, it's not attached to any of the other nodes except the root node. Great. And let's put a health bar. Don't forget to click the main node, which is our root node, and let's instantiate our health bar. Let's save this and let's see what happens. So there we have it. We have a nice little game scene with a nice background, a health bar, a player, a cart that he pushes, and enemy zombies. And why is this important? Because of reusability. You make enemies once, you can use them 100 times. You make bullets once, use it 100 times. And you make a cart once, use it 1,000 times if you like. So this makes Godot projects modular because you can just reuse scenes that you built in the project over and over again. And if I change, let's go to the cart and I'm just going to change something called the modulate the color. Let's change it to white, or any other color actually. Let's say I want to change the card color to this color blue here. Let's save this, and if we go to the main game now, and let's look at it, the card turns blue. So one change to the original scene is updated to every instance of that scene. Let's do it again to the enemy. Let's flip all enemies. So let's give it a rotation of 180. So the main enemy we flipped. And let's go back to our game and let's run our game. Whatever we do to our main scene affects all instances of that scene. In this case, our enemy. And that's what makes it powerful. This is one way of instancing a child scene. But you can also do it via code. I'll just flash a snippet across the screen. But most of the time, in real world games, we want to spawn enemies rather than physically drag an enemy into the screen. So we'll write code that does this for us. They can be spawned or instanced dynamically via code. The final mental model I would like to leave with you is we use nodes to build things. We use scenes to package things. And a scene can be a node as well. But when you use a scene as a node, we use instancing to reuse scenes. So I hope my retroactive video was helpful to you to explain basically what nodes, scenes, and instances are. Because when I came across from other game engines, I was totally confused and I thought Godot was difficult. And now I know that Godot is much easier because it's much more modular. I hope this video was informative to you and hope to see you in the next one.